Welcome back to DSR. We're returning to Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt Players Pack. The Players Pack was just released last week on June 30th on D&D Beyond. The book has been out for years, and the Players Pack is a small subset of the book. So we're going to do the magic items today, and this is a fantastic piece of art depicting the first one we're going to cover, which is the Sacrificial Brand. Okay, and yes, he's rising up out of a pool of blood. There's a reason for that. Okay, so the Sacrificial Brand, first off, is an instance of a new magic item of a new subcategory that Monkey DM created for this book. The subcategory is Eldritch Carving. So think of this like a Tasha's Cauldron of Everything spell wrought tattoo, right? It's a subcategory of wondrous items. Okay, and all of this text up here is boilerplate text for Eldritch Carvings. Okay, this is not specific to the Sacrificial Brand. So in here, you see that there's a reference to if attunement is required. Okay, that is not specific to the Sacrificial Brand. The Sacrificial Brand does not itself have attunement. Okay, so I found this confusing until I actually saw it in the PDF of the full book, where it talks about all this separately as the Eldritch Carving category, and then under that it says Sacrificial Brand. All right, so I'm gonna read through the Eldritch Carving boilerplate, but keep in mind that that's separate from the Sacrificial Brand. To apply in Eldritch Carving, one must follow a gruesome process. Unlike most art, where the artist determines the quality of the art, with the Eldritch Carvings, the canvas, the person getting carved, determines the quality of the work. The canvas must envision the rune in their mind as best they can, causing their body to distort under the Eldritch pressure. The carver can then simply apply the necessary tools against the skin and let the Eldritch powers move the brush, needle, or knife, depending on whether the Eldritch carving is drawn, tattooed, or scarified, respectively. This procedure takes 1 hour and can be done as part of the short rest. And the drawn, tattooed, or scarified also correspond to the rarity levels of the magic item. That is the specific instance of an Eldritch carving. So we'll see those in the Sacrificial Brand below. After the Eldritch carving is complete, a creature is attuned to it if required. The Sacrificial Brand does not require attunement, and it gains its effects. To remove an Eldritch carving, the flesh where the Eldritch carving is located needs to be thoroughly burnt. Burning a carving also removes the attunement to it. Scarified Eldritch carvings can't be removed. So even though Sacrificial Brand does not require attunement, you can't remove it unless you burn the skin off where the brand is. And if it's a scarified Sacrificial Brand, you can't remove it at all. And now this text is specific to the Sacrificial Brand, but they made this really confusing in D&D Beyond because they didn't separate it in any way. All right, so I'm going to highlight it. This text is for the Sacrificial Brand itself. All the text above that, what's currently highlighted, is boilerplate text for Eldritch Carvings. Okay, so again, this is the Sacrificial Brand description now. The carving, notorious among hunters and commonly dubbed the Brand of Death, is a harbinger of an early demise for those burdened with its curse. Nevertheless, Steinhardt and Martyr Tullio, valiant souls undaunted by fear, carved the Eldritch sigil into their own skin willingly. By bearing the ominous symbol, they sought to lure beasts closer to them during the hunt, granting their brothers in arms moments of respite amidst the chaos. All right, so let's look at the magic item properties now. So there are 3 levels of this: common, uncommon, and rare. The drawn is the common version, the tattooed is the uncommon version, and scarified is the rare version. I'm going to put the ratings along the bottom of the screen here, which is not how I usually format these for magic items, these magic item videos, but it's going to make more sense when I get to the next category of magic items that are going to be covered. All right, during the days, so this is the drawn version or common. During the 3 days of the blood moon, all evil-aligned creatures within Lyerna gain advantage on wisdom perception or wisdom survival checks to locate the creature with this Eldritch carving. So they're just going to have an easier time finding you. They don't automatically know where you are. Yeah, to spot you or to hunt you down. Why would you want this? Just as a really niche scenario of during these hunts, maybe you want creatures to find you easier. There are potentially advantages depending on how the DM crafts the hunts. If there's a time limit or something like that, it's going to make it easier for them to find you and maybe you complete the hunt faster. All right, so it's kind of very edge case. Mostly this is a plot device, although I was talking with Monkey DM and asking some questions, and he let me know that, because I haven't read the entire 500-page book yet, Like it's just too much. Too much to read. Not too much in general. I mean, too much for me to read in 1 week with everything else I have going on. But I have been going through it, and it's very interesting, compelling stuff. But I learned from Monkey DM and from reading different pieces of it that this is also used as like a Deus Ex Machina narrative approach, narrative tool for bringing PCs back to life is one way to use this, right? If your character dies, this is a way that they can come back, which would be caused by the blood moon. So the blood moon brings them back, and they get one of these sacrificial brands. Note that also there's the background where you basically start off with your character as if this has already happened to you, where you died, the blood moon brought you back, and you start off with one of these brands. So the tattooed version, which is the uncommon version of the sacrificial brand, during the 3 days of the blood moon, all evil aligned creatures within Liurna gain advantage on wisdom perception or wisdom survival checks to locate the creature with this Eldritch Carving. So same as the previous version, right? So these are all additive or cumulative. If they are within 120 feet of a creature bearing the Eldritch Carving, they know their exact location and receive a +1 bonus on attack rolls and damage rolls against them. This one starts to get into they're getting like mechanical advantages and benefits directly against you, not just to hunt you down, but also know your exact location and attack rolls and damage rolls against you, right? But I'm going to actually rank this for tank because you want things to be encouraged to target you when you're a tank. Yeah, that is part of your job as a tank, is to draw fire. Now, the other part of it being a tank is to survive that focus fire. And this is a little bit working against it. So it's going to be like an F rating for survival, but a C exclamation point rating for tank. Because for some builds, this could be the way you want to taunt creatures. Like you're taunting them by encouraging them to attack you by giving them these bonuses against you. All right, then the scarified rare version. During the 3 days of the blood moon, all evil aligned creatures within Liurna gain advantage on wisdom perception or wisdom survival checks to locate the creature with the Eldritch Carving. If they're within 120 feet of a character bearing the Eldritch Carving, they know the exact location and receive a +3 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls against them, and they have a -3 penalty on attack rolls and damage rolls against other creatures not bearing the brand. In addition, creatures bearing this carving begin to painfully bleed from it when hostile monsters within 300 feet of them are aware of their position. They can't be surprised for the duration of the blood moon. All right, so things are getting a little bit more interesting here. It's even, I'm going to say, better for a tank because it gives bigger bonuses to target you and actually gives penalties to target anyone else. So that is now a 6-point swing on attack rolls and damage rolls between them targeting other people and targeting you. So if you want to be an awesome tank, you might want to go for the scarified sacrificial brand, because that is going to give them a lot of incentive to attack you. Just make sure you have ways to survive that focus fire, right? Especially with these +3 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls. Either get like a really good AC and have resistance, damage reduction. Like you would want to be stacking all that kind of stuff. This one actually has a benefit for you, which is you automatically know when one of these monsters from the blood moon are within 100 or within 300 feet of you, and they cannot surprise you. So there's actual mechanical benefits to this one. I think that overall they're minor compared to I'm going to say detriments. But again, these detriments are a bit ironically good for a tank. So for the uncommon sacrificial brand, I'm going to say it's a D overall because it's like a C exclamation point for tanks, but it's an F for scouting and an F for survival. Whereas the rare one, I'm going to give it a C overall because it's like a B exclamation point for tanks and a D for survival. I feel like the can't be surprised and you automatically know when they're within 300 feet. I don't know if that outweighs the penalties. If you're not a tank, like just don't get this. This is a terrible thing to do. Terrible thing to get if you're not the tank trying to draw fire. Like nobody else should take these. Unless you want the common level version, which is really more of a plot device, which is why I've ranked that one P for plot device. So very cool and interesting new magic item, and I like the idea, and I like the fact that there's like this mechanical built-in narrative tool to allow PCs to be brought back, but not brought back for nothing. Like that's one of the things I've always used of those tools. Like you can't just be brought back for nothing. It's got to cost something. And so I've always worked that into the different things when I, when I let a player bring back their character after they die. So I agree with this approach. Very cool. Then we have a new category of magic weapon that he's created called trick weapons. Okay, and every single one of these is a weapon that can transform between two different forms. Okay, And you can always swap the transform between their forms as a bonus action. Okay, so that's the common boilerplate between all of these is bonus action swap. They transform between two versions of weapons. Sometimes they change into different weapon types when they transform, and sometimes they do not. Sometimes they gain, well, they always gain different properties when you transform. These are all magic items. All right, so we're going to go into the first one, which is called the Meat Hookshot, which is a weapon, and it's depicted there in the art. It's like a blunderbuss combined with like this blade on the end, and you can separate, the transformation is separating the blade off of it, and then you've got this like hook bladed thing and in one hand and a blunderbuss in the other hand. All right, and I've also written up, and you can see it now in the, I'm going to put the, when I go over these magic items, I'm just going to put the ratings on the screen as soon as I start talking about it, because I also put in the information there to try to help you see what the two different versions of the transformations do and how they are different from each other. So I'm just going to have those up all the time for each of these magic items. And I hope this helps you to parse and wrap your head around what these things are doing. When I first approached it, I found it fairly complex and took me a bit to wrap my head around. But by writing it out like this, it actually really simplified and helped me to understand it a great deal. So I hope it helps you that way. All right, so the Meat Hookshot. When the mannequin of the Slowrid abattoir gained sentience, the Scions sent enforcers to quell this threat to Lyrna's delicate existence. From the abattoir's meat hooks and the blunderbusses of the slain enforcers, the Slaughtered, as the mannequin named themselves, crafted these versatile weapons nicknamed the Meat Hook. The Hookshot is a trick weapon used by hunters to help close the gap to their prey in a devastating whirl of blades and gunpowder. The trick weapon is that as a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of this weapon. In its untransformed state, the Hookshot is a two-handed weapon connected by a short length of chain, a sickle, and a blunderbuss. So you would have, in the untransformed state, you would have two weapons. Now they're connected by a chain, and it doesn't say you have to wield both, so you could still stow one of them and fight with one of them and another different weapon, right? But they are just connected by a chain. That might come up sometimes. In its transformed state, which is when you put these two together, the weapon is a single two-handed weapon, a blunderbuss with a bladed attachment that can act as a battle axe. Okay, and there's a little bit of extra text because you might be wondering how are you dual wielding a sickle and a blunderbuss, because the blunderbuss has the two-handed property. Well, there's additional explanation here. Untransformed. While untransformed, the sickle has the finesse property, so you could make dexterity attacks with it, and the blunderbuss doesn't have the two-handed property, so it's removed. The magic item removes the two-handed property from the blunderbuss when it's untransformed. Using this pair of weapons together requires the sickle to be held in one hand and the blunderbuss in the other. I guess the DM can rule, like I said, can you stow one of these and not use it and hold the other one? This line says you're required to hold the sickle in one hand and the blunderbuss in the other. I don't know if that means you must be holding these or you can't just put them in both of these in one hand, right? If you're going to be using both of them, you must have two hands holding each one. I think it's up to DM interpretation of that. I'm going to go with the latter, right? You do not have to hold these, but if you want to be holding both of them, they must be held in separate hands. You can't hold both of them in one hand. When you take the attack action with the sickle, you can make an attack with the blunderbuss as a bonus action, ignoring the barrel property. So, all right, so there's some modifications here. The sickle has finesse, which is actually, and the blunderbuss doesn't have the two-handed, so that way you can dual wield these. Adding finesse to the sickle is pretty good because the blunderbuss is a ranged weapon, which means you have to use dexterity with it. Sickle doesn't normally have the finesse properties. Normally you'd have to use strength with it, and that would create, like who would be the one character, the PC that wants to use this weapon? You'd have to be a character that either has a good strength and dexterity score, or a character that can replace the ability score you use with the weapons, like an artificer, battlesmith, or a warlock with Pact of the Blade, something like that. And then you would replace the strength from sickle and the dexterity from the blunderbuss with whatever that one is. But this makes it so you don't have to worry about that. You can just be a dexterity-based character, and you attack with a sickle with dexterity, and you attack with a blunderbuss with dexterity. So that kind of like elegantly solves that problem for you. The other thing it does is this, which you may think is, at first, not nearly as potent as it is. Okay, let's talk through that. So you have a bonus action attack. Now, this weaponizes your bonus action completely on its own, first. Second, it ignores the barrel property. And remember, with the blunderbuss, it has twin barrel, which means it has two bullets. You can load both of them. But since it ignores the barrel property is also the property for this weapon that gives it the ammunition, that makes it use ammunition. So when you use the bonus action to attack with this blunderbuss, it's not going to consume the ammunition. In fact, if you already have it loaded, it's not going to consume that ammunition either. And that also means when you attack with it as this bonus action, you can fire both at the same time to deal the increased damage, again, without expending the ammunition and without having to worry about reloading it. So you get this free bonus action attack. Now, also on top of all of this, the blunderbuss is not a regular weapon. It does not make an attack roll against your target. It does a cone area effect attack, and they make dexterity saving throws against it. And if you are firing both barrels, it's 2d6 plus your dexterity modifier for that damage. So you're looking at, like, depending on when you get this, anywhere from like 10 to 12 points of damage in a 20-foot cone area as your bonus action. Every single round, no ammunition required, no loading property or loading-esque property related overhead for ammunition. That's pretty good right there, right? Now, it does require that you attack with a sickle. So in this case, you wouldn't want to like stow one of the weapons. The only way you're going to benefit from it is you must use both weapons. You attack with a sickle, and then you can be doing this bonus action blunderbuss, like shotgun blast every single round. All right, then in its transformed state, this is when you put it together. When you take the attack action, you can attack with either the blunderbuss or the bladed attachment, which uses the stats of a battle axe wielded two hands. So it's going to be the 1d10, the versatile, like you're always wielding it two hands, because when you put it together, it requires two hands. In addition, the item gains the Hookshot property. Hookshot, as a utilized action, you can launch the sickle from the blunderbuss. So you like take the sickle and load it in the barrel or something like that, and then fire it, and you're shooting the sickle at somebody, to which it remains attached by a length of sturdy chain. Make a ranged attack roll against a creature you can see within 30 feet of you. On a hit, the target takes slashing damage equal to 1d4 plus your dexterity modifier. If the creature is your size or smaller, it must succeed on a DC 13 strength save or be pulled in a straight line to the nearest unoccupied space to you. You pull it up to 30 feet, and you can't choose the distance. It is going to be pulled all the way to you. Okay? So you can't choose for it to stop short. It's going to be pulled all the way to you if it fails this strength save. If the creature is larger than you, then you are pulled all the way to it. At the end of your turn, the hook detaches from the creature and reattaches itself to the blunderbuss. So if you hit, they make the saving throw, and then then they're either pulled to you or you're pulled to them. And if you are a melee fighter, either one of those is good enough for you, right? Like, you want to be next to them, sure. Right? This is a great way for you to make sure that you're always in melee. So this is an extra, let's call it 30 feet of movement, whether you move or 30 feet of pulling them to you, so that you can make sure that they're in melee. So you might want to start combats with this thing transformed. That way on round one, you can make sure that even if you don't have enough movement to reach them, you can reach them. Now, it is the utilized action. So if you're going to do this hook shot, it takes your whole action. So if you have extra attack, you're not making any more attacks. You only get this one thing as your action, because it's the utilized action. Now, if you're a fighter with action surge, yeah, you can get around that and then start attacking them. And then so you could shoot this, and then bonus action transform it back into its separated state. And if you have action surge, then you action surge and make those attacks. And then, but unfortunately, you've already used your bonus action, so you're not going to be doing that shotgun blast with your bonus action on that round. On the same round, you transformed it. So cool little item, and it's pretty interesting for an uncommon item. I'm going to say it's an A. It doesn't give a bonus to attack rolls or damage rolls. Just weaponizing your bonus action for a cone effect AoE damage, dealing at least 10 points of damage if they fail the saving throw, 0 damage if they succeed. But also if they fail, then Topple also activates. So they make another saving throw or they're toppled. So you have a cone effect topple effect with this as well. That is pretty powerful. The Hookshot, and so the transformed version of this, I'd say, is probably the lesser power version of this weapon. But like I said, when you need that movement, when you need to close the distance, right? How much damage you're going to do if you have to dash? 0. Using this, you at least close the distance. You're going to deal a little bit of damage. And if you're the frontliner, you've got them right where you want them, which is they're next to you, which means they can't just like run away without provoking opportunity attacks. So yeah, so this is an A-type weapon. It's got some different interesting utility options, and I like it. Dream Executioner is the next one. This one requires attunement. The Hookshot, Meat Hookshot, does not. And we got some sweet art depicting what this thing looks like. Trick weapon. As a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of the weapon. It is untransformed. In its untransformed state, the Dream Executioner is a scythe and a lantern. In its transformed state, the weapon is a single massive maul. You gain a +1 bonus attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. So this is a magic weapon now that has a +1 bonus, but it is a rare item and requires attunement. Untransformed, the scythe gains the harvest property, and the harvest property is whenever a creature of CR1 or higher, or level 1 or higher, dies within 15 feet of you, the lantern harvests the creature's soul. The soul becomes trapped in the lantern, and the creature can't be resurrected until the soul is freed. As a magic action, you can free a soul trapped in the lantern. The lantern can hold a maximum of 1 soul. And then transformed, the maul gains the soul explosion property. Soul explosion. When you hit a creature with this weapon, while a soul is held in the lantern, you can sacrifice the soul, permanently destroying it to create a massive explosion of a ghost flame. Each creature of your choice within a 15-foot emanation originating from you must make a DC 14 dexterity saving throw, taking 2d8 radiant damage and 2d8 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Undead automatically fail the saving throw. So we got an interesting AoE effect. There's no friendly fire. It's each creature of your choice in a 15-foot emanation. The damage is a total of 48, half of it being radiant, half of it being necrotic. The DC is just a little bit low for a rare level magic item, but they still take half damage on a successful save. And then undead automatically fail the saving throw, which is cool. Also, this interesting part of it, where it says the soul is permanently destroyed right here, permanently destroying it. In normal campaigns, I would say that this is niche, useful in niche situations, right? Like you're fighting a lich or a flaming skull or one of those things that just keeps coming back. This will destroy it and it can't come back, right? And those are not very common creature types. But against those, that's potentially very useful. I think fiends will often do this as well, where they come back. Like I think most fiend stat blocks say that they'll come back, but it usually is. It depends on the lore and how your DM writes the lore. It says they are reborn in, the abyss or the hells or something like that. And there's no, I think the lore says that they're limited. They can't return to the prime material plane for 100 years, but it doesn't actually say that in their stat block. So it's up to the DM to decide how much of a problem that is. Okay, but if you're playing in this campaign setting, which is Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt, this is actually a big deal because every blood moon, all the creatures that have died in the last 30 days come back unless their soul has been destroyed. So if you want to make sure that these monsters stay dead, this is your weapon. Destroy their souls on purpose. Like that's like maybe not the main reason you're doing the soul explosion. The main reason you're doing soul explosion is for the damage, right? But the nice secondary benefit is that creature will never come back. Yeah. So this is pretty cool. I think it's like a B when it's separated because all you're doing is harvesting that soul. I mean, it is a +1. And it requires attunement, but it's a rare item. Normally, a rare weapon will be +2 and doesn't require attunement. So it's only going to be a B for that. But harvesting the soul prevents them from being able to be rezzed or come back in any way unless you release it. But once you transform it, that soul explosion is a pretty good effect. Yeah, 18 points of damage with a dexterity saving throw, half on a successful save, but the damage is necrotic and radiant, which is some of the better damage types, and no friendly fire in a 15-foot area around you. It's pretty cool. And so you could be transforming this thing back and forth, and all you have to do is make sure you harvest, like transform it back to its scythe state to harvest a soul on round 1, transform it back to the maul state, soul explosion round 2, and then just every other round keep going back and forth, harvesting souls and exploding this thing. So I'm going to give it as far as weapons go, and A is a blaster. So B overall in the scythe state, A overall in the maul state. Ravenous Gazer. This is a glaive, but this one's a glaive in both versions. This is also rare, requires attunement. Acquiring forbidden knowledge always comes at a cost. Any creature that attunes to this glaive is considered proficient with it, so you gain proficiency with it, which is cool. Especially because this has benefits for spellcasters, and a lot of spellcasters do not have proficiency with martial weapons. You gain a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. Okay, so another rare weapon with attunement, but is a +1. Trick weapon. As a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of this weapon. In its untransformed state, the gazer is a glaive. In its transformed state, the gazer is a glaive that can be used as a spellcasting focus as well. So now you're holding a spellcasting focus. And if your DM plays with spell components, that's going to be pretty useful. I understand most DMs do not, which I think is a big failure. That is one of the things that leads to the perception of the martial caster divide, right? If you just get rid of and ignore spell components, you've increased that gap. Yeah, because it makes spellcasters way more powerful than they should be in a lot of situations. I play with a modified version of the spell component rules, which is, I try to keep it simple. And I think Treant Monk plays it this way too. He said in one of his videos that I've seen where I just treat basically somatic and material components as the same thing, right? If you are, and I just say, if you are holding a focus, you're good. I don't care what your other hand is holding. You're good. It doesn't matter. You don't have to reach a pouch. You're just totally good on somatic and material components. And if you're not holding a spellcasting focus, then you need a hand free. And if you have the Warcaster feat, that also just makes it all, yeah, I don't care what you're holding. You're good if you have the Warcaster feat, right? I don't differentiate somatic and material components at all. And that allows the important aspects of this to still function so that spellcasting isn't overpowered, but makes it simple enough that it's reasonable to use in game. All right, to transform this weapon, you must feed it your blood. Each time you shift this weapon into a transformed state or start your turn with the weapon in its transformed state, you take 1d4 necrotic damage, which can't be reduced or prevented in any way. This damage can't break your concentration. I appreciate that line because this is intended for spellcasters, and if it broke your concentration on this 1d4 damage you're taking, that would be a huge negative. Transformed, while this weapon is in its transformed state, it gains a +2 bonus to spell attack rolls. It grants you a +2 bonus to spell attack rolls, increases your spell save DC by 1, and gives you true sight with a range of 30 feet. So this is pretty good. +2 bonus to spell attack rolls is a big deal. Note that stacks with other things you have to increase your spell attack bonus. So if you have a Rod of the Packkeeper, Wand of the War Mage, now you have to be holding those, so you can only hold this and one of those. Now glaives are two-handed, so maybe you want to actually, if you're a spellcaster, you may actually want to get Brutalizer, the feat, so you can hold this in one hand, and then in your other hand hold the Rod of the Packkeeper if you're a Warlock, and then you're going to get +2 your spell attack rolls from this, and +1 to 3 from your spell attack rolls with the Rod of the Packkeeper. Or you could just be a sorcerer, start your innate sorcery to increase your save DC by 1, and then turn this on to increase your save DC by another 1. And you might be thinking, 1 isn't very much, that's not worth it. Adding a 1 to your spell save DC is huge. And adding 2 to it is huger. So this thing's pretty good. Now you're going to be taking that 1d4 necrotic damage every round. So hopefully you have some way of like renewing temporary hit points. Like the Heroism spell would be perfect for you in this case, because the Heroism spell is going to give you temporary hit points at the start of each of your turns equal to the spellcaster's ability score modifier, which is going to be like 3 to 5. If you get it to at least 4, then you're going to absorb all of the damage from this. Now that's not damage reduction, so temporary hit points can absorb this damage. So you'd be good. So Heroism is probably like your S tier spell for this weapon. And then you're suffering none of the downsides, and you have true sight with a range of 30 feet while it's transformed. And this thing is super gross and icky looking in a cool way when you transform it, because the blades open up and it's got eyeballs all inside of there. This thing's crazy. The Unstable Crumbler. What a cool name. While holding this weapon, your attacks and spells deal double damage to structures, and fire damage you take is reduced by an amount equal to your Constitution modifier. So you get all of those features right off the bat in whatever state it's in, whether it's transformed or not. This one also requires attunement. Trick Weapon has a bonus action. You can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of this weapon. It is in its untransformed state. This weapon is a roaring cannon with smoke coming out of its mouth. In its transformed state, the handle extends, turning the weapon into a highly unstable and destructive maul. As part of the bonus action, you can do the following. When you transform the cannon into a maul, so these features are dependent on the direction you're going with the transformation. Okay, so when you go cannon to maul, you can shoot at your feet, even if the cannon isn't loaded, using the deflagration to propel yourself and jump up to 30 feet in any direction. The jump doesn't cost you any movement. Very cool. A little extra, like it's basically a bonus action, almost as good as a teleport, right? Because you'll still provoke opportunity attacks if you jump past people within their reach. But other than that, like it's kind of like, 30-foot teleport, 30-foot, a little bit of fly speed kind of thing. You could be jumping up cliffs, jumping down different directions. So, and I know there's debate on, does jump allow you to fall that distance? When something says you can jump that distance, especially when it's a magic item or a spell or something magical, I say yes, right? It ensures safe landing within that distance. So you could, yes, jump down using this safely to land 30 feet. And I would just flavor it as, instead of shooting at your feet when you start to jump, you jump down and you shoot at your feet as you're landing to prevent any damage. This is a rare magic item after all. When you transform the maul into a cannon, so this is the other direction, you can reload the cannon and retain its unstable force. So this is a bonus action, like this automatically gives it a bonus action reload, which is actually kind of a big deal for a cannon, because normally cannons take a full action to reload unless you have the cannoneer feat. And then if you reload it in this way, the next time you hit with a range attack with the cannon on your turn, you are pushed back 30 feet in a straight line. So you get this like movement boost you may or may not want. So make sure after you go from maul to cannon that you are positioned in a way that either your back is against a wall and you're not going to fly backwards, or you actually want to move backwards, or at least at the very least, it's not going to hurt you to fly backwards at 30 feet, okay? Then in the untransformed state, the unstable Crumbler heats up cannonballs, transforming them to infernal ammunition. Whenever you roll a 15 or higher on the d20 when making a ranged attack roll with this weapon, the cannonball becomes overheated and explodes on impact. When the cannonball explodes in this way, it is considered an explosive cannonball. And an explosive cannonball it has a 10-foot area effect around the target, and everything in that area has to make a dexterity saving throw or take 2d8 fire damage with half damage on a successful save against the explosion, okay? So you have a 25% chance, say 15 or higher. It actually is a 30% chance of causing this to happen, right? If it was 16 or higher, then it would be 25%. So you have a 30% chance to cause this whenever you attack with it. And note that that's the die roll, not your net attack roll, okay? So it has to be the die roll that gets a 15 or higher. But you could improve your odds by getting advantage and use Heroic Inspiration to try again. And if you are a Elven Battlesmith Artificer, so you're using intelligence to attack with this cannon now, you could get Elven Accuracy and roll 3 times to greatly increase your chances. So you'd be going from a 30% chance to like a 56. I'm going to say I think it's about 56% chance with advantage, and with a 3 rolls. It's too much math in my head. We're getting close to like 81. Okay, is it 81% ish? Somebody do the math for me. I think you're getting close to 81% chance to activate the explosive cannonball if you have triple advantage from Elven Accuracy. So that's pretty cool. Then in the transformed state, whenever you roll an 18 or higher on the d20, remember the transformed state is you're hitting them. It's a maul. The transformed state is a maul. Whenever you roll an 18 or higher on the d20, when making an attack roll with this weapon, the maul's head detonates, causing an area effect that acts as a fireball, 8d6 damage, save DC 15, centered on the target. If you succeed on the saving throw, you take no damage. Okay, so once again, Artificer, Battlesmith using intelligence to attack with this Elven Accuracy, and then you're going to have a 15% chance, because 18 or higher is 15% chance, because it's inclusive of the number, and getting advantage on that would probably make it like a 20, almost 28% chance to hit if you have advantage. And if you have triple advantage, you're probably getting close to 54% chance. Am I close on that mental math, squaring a number in my head? I think I'm in the ballpark. 56% chance to activate a fireball. No, 15. No, it wouldn't be 56. It would be about 40%. Okay, so if you have triple advantage, it's 40%. On activating that fireball every time you hit with this maul. Now, if you're an artificer doing this, you definitely want to make sure that you have a decent dexterity saving throw so that you're not blowing yourself up with it. But this also has friendly fire, so be careful you're not blowing up your allies too, right? Look for ways to get like fire resistance or even better fire immunity, high dexterity saving throws. And unfortunately, the way that the damage reduction on this one works, the standard rule is you apply damage reduction first, then damage resistance. So if it were going to be like 50 damage, fire damage you were going to take, you would deduct your constitution modifier from the fire damage first. Let's say your constitution modifier is I don't know, let's give you a +5, right? So it would reduce the damage from 50 to 45, then the damage resistance would cut it from 45 to 22. If you went the other way around, the damage reduction would be doubled, right? You would cut it from 50 to 25 by the damage resistance, and then take off another 5, then it would be a net 20 damage. But unfortunately, yeah, and that would be certainly that order of operations would be more beneficial for us, but that is not the stated rules as written. Stated rules as written is you apply damage modifiers first, then the multipliers of damage resistance or vulnerability, things like that. By the way, movement speed modifications work the same way according to the dash action. I mean, it doesn't state that everything functions that way, but the dash action sets a precedence where you apply flat movement speed modifiers first, then you double it with the dash. Okay, so this one's pretty cool. I'm going to give it an A overall, but this one's like not an A if you're just wanting to just making regular weapon attacks. I mean, it's activating a bonus action reload of your cannon, so you could attack once per round with your cannon, and then so every round you'd be like swing your maul, transform it to the cannon, make one attack with the cannon. Then you'd have to bonus action switch it back because you can't attack with the cannon again. So you'd have to go like you'd only be attacking with a cannon, assuming this is your only method of reloading. You'd be attacking with a cannon like every third round, unless you just want to waste one of your attacks from an attack action. So that's nice. The biggest benefit is the AoE damage. So as a just regular weapon for weapon attacks, this is going to be like a C for weapon attacks, because it is rare and it doesn't give any bonuses to your attack roll or damage rolls, but it gives it a lot of AoE capabilities. So this is a weapon that makes you a pretty good blaster. So it's going to be an A overall as a blaster. And just be careful about blasting yourself and your allies with it. Then we have the Galvanized Claw, which is a trick weapon, but in one of its states, it's not even a weapon. All right, so this is a very rare magic item, requires attunement. Ripping the flesh of beasts they slay to fashion ferocious weapons is something hunters have gotten remarkably good at over the course of their hunts. And that's evocative of like the game Monster Hunter. So where you like defeat these big monsters and then harvest their pieces to make better weapons and armor for yourself. While attuned to this weapon, you have resistance to lightning and thunder damage. So 2 damage resistances, which are pretty good. Lightning and thunder are decently common enough that you're going to notice that, which is great. Trick weapon. As a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of this weapon. In its untransformed state, the claw is a sinewy leather gauntlet made from the muscle and hide of a galvanized prowler, which is I think a monster stat block that he's added in this book. In its transformed state, the claw surges with electrical energy, merging with its wearer's forearm and turning into a monstrous claw. Untransformed, the bestial hide invigorates you, giving you lightning fast reflexes of the galvanized prowler slaughtered to make this gauntlet. You have advantage on initiative rolls. In addition, the gauntlet feeds off of your power. If you have temporary hit points when you hit with a melee attack, you deal an extra 1d6 lightning damage. The gauntlet has 3 charges and regains all expended charges daily at dawn. When you take lightning or thunder damage, you can take a reaction and expend 1 charge to take no damage instead and gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the damage you would have taken. So it says equal to the damage you would have taken, but you have resistance. So this thing gives you resistance, so it's going to cut the damage in half, and then that's the damage you would have taken when you calculate this. So like a lightning bolt's going to be 28 damage on average. You would cut that in half since you're now resistant to it. So 14 damage. And if you use this against a lightning bolt, your average lightning bolt, you would probably be getting 14 temporary hit points. And while you have temporary hit points from any source, not just from this magic item, you deal an extra 1d6 lightning damage on every melee attack, which is a pretty nice benefit for all melee attackers, but even better on a monk, because monks are making 5 attacks. So anything that adds to every single attack is a big deal for a monk, and pretty big deal for fighters too, right? Because they have a lot of attacks too. But wait, we're not done. There's more. Transformed, the gauntlet merges with your forearm, turning your hand into an aberrant claw that you can't be disarmed of. This claw changes the damage of your unarmed strike to 1d8, the damage type to slashing, and you can use your dexterity or strength modifier for the attack rolls and damage rolls made with it. Further, you gain a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with it. Nice. Now we have a +1. When you take the attack action with this claw, you can make 1 attack with a bonus action. So we're now activating a bonus action attack. Monks are not going to care because you already have a free bonus action attack you want or flurry of blows. But if you are a barbarian or a fighter or anybody else who's going unarmed attacker, you're going to love that. Or even if you're not going unarmed attacker, right? This gives you the ability to make an attack with it as a bonus action, even if you're using a weapon for the rest of your attacks. So this gives you a bonus action attack, and it's a pretty nice bonus action attack. In addition, if you have temporary hit points from any source, when you hit with a melee attack using this claw, you deal an extra 1d8 lightning damage. So 1d8 damage added to every single attack you're making now, and this changes your damage to 1d8 for unarmed strikes. So the monks are not going to care about changing their unarmed strike damage to 1d8 because this is a very rare item. You're probably late tier 3, early tier 4, or somewhere in tier 4 before you even get an item like this. Monks are already going to be doing 1d10 at least, if not 1d12 damage with their unarmed strikes, but it's going to add 1d8 lightning damage on top of that if they have temporary hit points from any source. That is a huge deal for monks. Huge deal. Because it works with your unarmed strikes from your flurry of blows too, right? This is huge. The claw is too unwieldy for delicate handling, such as activating intricate mechanisms like the trigger of a firearm or picking locks with thieves' tools. So that just means with this hand, it's not both hands, right? This is just one of your hands. With this hand, you can't use thieves' tools, pick locks, or trigger, pull the trigger of a firearm. But you can still do that with your other hand. Yeah, I think this one is really good for monks, but pretty good for almost anyone, right? Any martial attacker who's making multiple attacks is going to want to add an extra 1d6 lightning damage on top of every attack, right? Like if you have a vicious weapon, that's going to add 2d6 to every hit with the weapon, and then this is going to add another 1d6 on top of that. And I keep saying this triggers when you have temporary hit points from any source. So now we have spells in the game, we have class and subclass features that give temporary hit points, we have feats that you can take to give yourself temporary hit points. You do not have to be transforming this thing back and forth to give yourself the temporary hit points. You can, but you don't have to. You can just leave it transformed and attack with a claw as a monk, and then use other temporary temporary hit point sources to activate the lightning damage, which is pretty nice. So I'm gonna give this one like a B in its untransformed state, but it's like a C exclamation point, because for monks in its untransformed state, it's still really good. And then you just build up those temporary hit points whenever you want, right? Give yourself temporary hit points, and then it's 1d6 lightning damage instead of 1d8 lightning damage on every unarmed strike. It's okay, not a big deal, but you can just then start transforming it. Unfortunately, the transformation takes your bonus action, which means you'd be giving up a flurry of blows. So for a monk, you wouldn't want to be transforming it very often in combat. Yeah. But in its transformed state as a claw weapon, I'd say it's an A, as a very rare. Now, keep in mind, as a rarity increases, in order to maintain an A, the features, damage, and bonuses, whatever this thing is doing, have to keep going up to remain an A. So these are not all ranked against each other. These are only ranked against other things of the same rarity level. Then we have one called the Orphan's Cradle. And we got some cool art depicting it. This one is also very rare, requires attunement. You gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls with this magic weapon, so it's a +1 as well, but this is all the time. Trick weapon. As a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of the weapon. In both states, the weapon is a Morning Star with a reach property. So now it's a one-handed Morning Star, and I don't think Morning Stars have the versatile property, if I'm remembering correctly. It's either that or the flail. One of them doesn't have it. But now that has reach, and reach is nice. Untransformed, the flowers growing in the cradle exude a sickly sweet scent that calms the mind of men and chases away nightmares. Humanoids within 10 feet of the cradle have advantage on saving throws against the charmed and frightened conditions, which is very nice. In addition, the cradle has the cleansing miasma and the vile miasma properties. So you're now exuding this 10-foot, they didn't call it an emanation, but it functions like an emanation, like an aura. This is always on, so you and every humanoid has advantage on saving throws against charmed and frightened conditions. So if you have a controller in the party who's trying to use charmed and frightened conditions and impose those on the enemies and they're humanoids, just make sure that you are not within 10 feet of them, or transform the weapon so that it doesn't give them the benefit. And you have Cleansing Miasma. As a magic action, you can cleanse one humanoid that you can see within 10 feet of you. It gains 1d12 temporary hit points and can end one of the following conditions: charmed, frightened, or poisoned. Once a creature has benefited from this property, it can't benefit from it again for 1 hour. So it takes a magic action, but other than that, there's no limit on how many times you can do this, except that a creature can only benefit from it once per hour. So you can hit your whole party with this and give everybody 1d12 temporary hit points just during a short rest. Not bad. Vile Miasma. When you hit a beast or an undead with this weapon, the target must succeed on a DC 16 Constitution saving throw or have the poison condition for 1 minute, even if the target is immune to the poison condition. So even if humanoid or undeads are often immune to the poison condition, and this will poison them anyway. The interesting part that doesn't apply to undead, but if there is a creature out there is beasts, okay? There are beasts like the badger, I think it is, that has advantage on saving throws versus poison. And that's one of the few creatures that are. The vast majority, like 1% of creatures, have advantage on saving throws versus poison condition, or have or poison resistance. Like 25% of creatures, most of which undead qualify are just straight up immune to the poison condition. So unless you're hitting a badger, the badger will have advantage on the save against this. But when you're hitting undead with it, the undead will not have advantage on the save versus the poison condition and will be poisoned regardless. Kind of an interesting, cool effect. A poison creature repeats the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success, but you can keep reapplying it, right? Oh, but wait, you can't. If a creature's saving throw is successful or the effect ends on it, the creature is immune to the vile miasma for 24 hours. But this is nice. You can do it on you can do it once per day on every undead you meet. And frankly, player characters are usually killing every monster they meet in combat, right? Not very often does something run away and you fight it again later. Certainly not within 1 day. I mean, it does happen once in a while. It's not super common. Depends on your DM, I guess. Then in the transformed state, when transformed, the cradle's plants ignite and it deals an extra 2d6 fire damage on a hit every hit. So now it's a +1 flame tongue Morning Star with reach. That's pretty good. In addition, the weapon gains the Fanned Flames and Withering Flames properties. Fanned Flames. As an action, you can rotate the cradle wildly around you, fanning the flames. Each creature in a 20-foot cone must make a DC 16 dexterity saving throw, taking 3d6 fire damage and 3d6 poison damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Beasts and undead have disadvantage on this saving throw. After this property is used, Orphan's Cradle reverts to its untransformed state and can't be transformed again for 1d4 rounds. So not bad, 6d6 damage, almost as much as a fireball. And you could be doing this once every 1d4 rounds, maybe twice in a combat, but usually once per combat. I don't know if that's worth it. You'd have to be in a very specific, like you'd want to make sure that you're pretty sure you're gonna kill like, multiple minions in order for this to be worth it, because you're going to be losing this 2d6 fire damage because it forces it to untransform for 1d4 rounds. So you're not going to get this 2d6 damage. So yeah, make sure you're only doing Fan Flames when there's a bunch of minions and you're confident you're going to take out several of them. Then we have Withering Flames. When you hit a beast or undead with this weapon, you can force the target to make a DC 16 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, the target has vulnerability to your choice of one of the following damage types until the start of your next turn: acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or radiant. If a creature saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, the creature is immune to Withering Flames for the next 24 hours. All right. So again, this essentially only works once per target per day, whether they succeed or fail in saving throw, right? It just works on them once per day. But still, vulnerability until the start of your next turn is a big deal. And even if you're just using this, like nobody in the party can deal any of those damage types, and the only source of one of those damage types is this weapon, just causing vulnerability against this weapon's 2d6 fire damage without any additional action economy or resources or charges being used is pretty good. Obviously, the party can easily build around this. Everybody could be getting some form of fire damage. Fire damage is a common one. And so the whole party for one round on this target could be dealing double fire damage. And player characters often can kill one creature, unless it's like the boss, can kill one creature in one round if they all just focus fire on it pretty easily. So they're going to easily take that thing out. And then on round 2, you just hit somebody else with it. Now it's vulnerable to everything, and you guys take that one out. So every round, you guys are just taking one out guaranteed. So this is pretty strong, but it is very rare. So I'm going to say it's an A-level item. In its untransformed state, it's like a B weapon, but it's got some other properties and control and healing properties. So it's going to be an A overall. In its transformed state, I'm going to say it's an A as a weapon, because it's a +1. I mean, it's +1 in both versions, but this one is now +1 plus the 2d6 fire damage, which brings it back up to an A. Because normally a normal, very rare weapon would be +3 with no attunement, right? So this is a +1 and requires attunement. And so I feel like it's a kind of a B-rated weapon, unless you transform it, and then it's 2d6 fire damage on top of that. And I feel like that justifies it back to a very rare, plus all these other features. So it's an A overall, but this one's got some interesting blaster options on it, as well as the support and self-buff feature of causing vulnerability. Revelations? Made of this one is very rare and requires attunement. And you have to have a 15 strength or higher to attune to this. Made of an unknown metal that mixes blood and steel, this ghastly sword is studded with dozens of eyes from various creatures that stare hungrily at all who are confronted with it. Only a competent hunter can wield a weapon of such weight, but armed with it, they will never lose sight of their prey and will never be caught in an ambush. Feels like that's a pun intended. Such a dangerous weapon should only be used with the utmost caution. You gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. While attuned to it, your sight improves as your vision starts echoing with that of the blade. While holding Revelations, you gain the following benefits. You can't be surprised. Other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you, and you are immune to the blinded condition as the sword absorbs the effect and closes 2 of its eyes instead before regrowing them. But I'm going to skip down to this bottom portion here. This has a curse effect as well. Devour Sight. While attuned to this weapon, your sight deteriorates rapidly. For each 5 days that pass, you gain a permanent -1 penalty on all wisdom perception checks made using your sight. When this penalty reaches -5, your eyes rot and melt out. You have the blinded condition as 2 new eyes appear on the blade. Yeah, the blade has taken your eyes. The sword's curse is insidious. While you remain attuned to the weapon, you do not suffer the penalty of your perception checks, and you do not realize that your sight is worsening. The blade's influence makes you perceive the sword in a clearer light. Perceive the world in a clearer light. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting, insidious thing. Now, if you just remain attuned to this, you never suffer any of the detrimental negative effects of the devoured sight, of the curse. But if you lose your eyeballs and then unattune to this weapon, you are in trouble because now you're permanently blinded. And note that the way that this says you are immune to the blind condition, that means you are immune to heavy obscurement, right? Because heavy obscurement causes the blinded condition. So does like darkness or the darkness spell. Anything that you can't see through, which is heavy obscurement, causes the blinded condition, but you are immune to the blinded condition, which means you just essentially have blind sight. And there's no limited range on the blind sight. You have blind sight to the maximum range of your eyesight, which is like 5 miles if you're on a totally flat surface, to 5 miles to the horizon. And if you're on a mountain, it could be 20 miles. So you have blind sight 20 miles. Yeah. That alone is kind of a big deal. But that's not even the specific weapon properties of the weapon yet. Trick weapon. As a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of this weapon. In its untransformed state, the weapon is a cleaver studded with eyeballs, depicted on the right. In its transformed state, the weapon is a whip composed of metal shards held together by a sinew of blood and flesh, so like a chain sword. Very cool. Untransformed, when you hit a creature with this cleaver, you curse them for the next hour. For the duration, you gain a +1 bonus to damage rolls made with the weapon against that target. Okay, let's finish reading this and I'll comment on it. The attack rolls you make with the weapon against a cursed target score a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20 on the d20, and you have advantage on wisdom, perception, or survival checks you make to find the target. The curse ends early if you transform the weapon, or if you have the unconscious condition. All right, so in order to trigger the curse, all you do is hit creatures with it, and then they're cursed, right? And if you hit 4 creatures with it, all 4 of them are cursed simultaneously. There is no limit to only one cursed creature at a time. So you have +1 damage rolls against all of them, and you score a critical hit on 19 or 20, and you have advantage to basically track and find them. So if you have creatures that are like hiding as a bonus action in the middle of combat, and then like stabbing your party for extra damage, yeah, this is going to be pretty good against those because you have advantage on your wisdom perception checks to find it, and a wisdom perception check does not mean you have to do an active roll. I've heard people say that word check means roll. No, check does not mean roll. Check means test. So a wisdom perception check is also a passive check, a passive wisdom check, because you're checking something against something else. You're testing, does this equal or exceed that? It's a check. So your passive wisdom score goes up by 5 when you have advantage. So it gives you, without even using the action economy, a +5 to try to spot creatures that are hiding from you. Yeah, pretty nice. Then transform, the whip deals 1d6 slashing damage instead of 1d4 and has the versatile property with a 1d8 damage die instead. So if you're not holding a shield and you just swing this whip with 2 hands, then it's a 1d8 damage weapon. But it doesn't have the finesse property. Once in each of your turns, when you hit a creature with this weapon, you can attempt to crush them under the weight of the whip. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw, DC equals 8 plus your strength modifier plus your proficiency bonus, or take 1d6 slashing damage and have the prone condition. So this is an additional damage bonus once per round. Once per turn. Yeah, once on each of your turns. So it is once per round. But you're going to do like maybe 1d8 damage plus 1d6 damage plus 1 from the curse plus 1 from the base weapon properties, right? It's a +1 weapon. Yep. And cause them to be prone, and then you have advantage on the rest of your attack rolls. So it's pretty nice. All right, I'm going to say this as a weapon. If this didn't have any of the other properties, as a weapon, it'd probably be a B-rated, very rare magic weapon. But it's got some interesting control properties. It's got the scouting benefits of just infinite blind sight, self-buff for infinite blind sight, some survival benefits of you can't be surprised, and creatures cannot have advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you. Although I don't know how they'd be unseen by you, because I mean, with blind sight, you can see invisible creatures too, right? Like, I don't know how they could be unseen by you because you see through heavy obscurement and you see through invisibility. I don't know how they could be unseen by you. Yeah. Maybe they're on the other side of an illusion? That might be the only way. They're on the other side of an illusion and they're attacking from the other side of the illusion. But an illusion essentially is like heavy obscurement. It's not cover. I don't know. Your DM may have to reconcile that for you and how they'd rule it. Anyway, so I'm going to say this is an A kind of weapon, even with that curse. Just make sure you unattune from it every 20 days so you don't lose your eyeballs. That's what I would recommend, assuming you know. Lastly, we have the Shard of Moonlight, which is an artifact and requires attunement. Some cool imagery there in that art. This weapon is the flesh of a great one carved away in pain and fashioned into a blade. And in case you weren't aware, Monkey DM used the word great one synonymous with great old one in this book, Steinhardt. So yeah, any reference to Great One also just means Great Old One. So it's the same kind of things you would expect when you're talking about Great Old Ones in the rest of D&D campaign settings. Yeah, it's the Far Realm, it's Hadar, it's Agathis, it's all of those kind of creatures. It's Cthulhu type alien beings, okay? The Shard of Moonlight is the reason the Shattered Moon exists and the Devouring Moon is no more. And just a quick thing about that, there are in this campaign setting, you have what's called an Eldritch Moon that happens periodically. The DM can decide how often it happens, and there's different ways to do that. But when an Eldritch Moon occurs, you roll for what kind of Eldritch Moon it is, and these are types of the Eldritch Moon. So there was a Shattered Moon, or there is a Shattered Moon. There used to be a Devouring Moon, but that one's gone apparently. And there's several others. There's the Blood Moon of Rebirth, which is one of the Eldritch Moons as well. Okay, so all kinds. There's like a dozen different Eldritch Moon types. And I've only read a few of them. They are spooky and evocative. I like it a lot. He who wields the blade is overwhelmed by hope, however misguided it might be. While attuned to this weapon, you gain the following benefits. You are proficient with greatswords and longswords. Very nice. You gain +3 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls made with this weapon, so it's a full-on +3. And the blade deals an extra 1d6 radiant damage on a hit. So again, very nice, right? This is like half a vicious plus a +3 base weapon. This is more damage than you're going to get out of a vicious weapon for sure. You have advantage on wisdom saving throws, except those made to resist madness. Kind of like it feels like this thing's making you really strong, but it's got some interesting built-in weaknesses. And you can use this weapon as a spellcasting focus. Again, very nice. All right, so Sentience, the Shard of Moonlight, is a sentient weapon with the same personality as the Great One whose flesh it was carved from. And I don't know if there's more lore somewhere that says which one this one came from, and maybe it's just up to the DM to decide which Great One it came from. But yeah, this could be a piece of Cthulhu or a piece of Hadar or a piece of Agathis or any of those, right? The weapon sporadically communicates telepathically with its wielder through images and sounds, though it doesn't speak. And it doesn't give the stats. Usually sentient weapons have like stats like intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. This one doesn't have those specified, so DM, you can make those up if you want. Trick weapon. As a bonus action, you can switch between the transformed and untransformed states of this weapon. It is in its untransformed state, the shard is a metallic longsword that absorbs light. In its transformed state, the weapon is a greatsword that pulses with lunar energy. In both states, this weapon has the light property, which means, yeah, you could hold this in your offhand with the brutalizer feat. So you could have a greatsword, another greatsword that doesn't have a light property in your main hand, and in your offhand you could have this greatsword. So you could be dual wielding greatswords. Pretty awesome. Untransformed, the blade seems to guide your strikes. Once on each of your turns, when you make an attack with this weapon, you can immediately make a second attack, no action required. It has the void absorption property as well. So one line there, but basically it gives you an extra attack with this weapon, which is a big deal because it's a +3 weapon. So +3 on the hit roll, +3 on the damage roll, and an extra 1d6 radiant damage plus everything else you might have, right? It's going to work with Great Weapon Master. So if it's a great sword and you use Great Weapon Master, then that's going to add, I mean, it's an artifact. You probably won't have this before level 17. So it's going to add +6 to your damage rolls on top of everything else just from Great Weapon Master, plus anything else you might have. Is a pretty big deal. All right. Void absorption, the void that fills the blade, is capable of absorbing magic. While holding the shard, you can take a reaction to absorb a spell that is targeting you, including spells with an area of effect. So if you're in the area of effect of a fireball, you can absorb that. The absorb spell's effect is canceled, which means the whole fireball would be canceled if you do this. The spell's energy, not the spell itself, is stored in the shard in the form of charges. The number of charges gained is equivalent to the level of spell when it was cast, 1 charge for cantrips, or level 3 for a fireball. If it's a 3 charges for a level 3 fireball. The shard can absorb up to and store up to 10 charges. If the shard doesn't have enough room for enough empty charges for a spell, it fails to absorb it. So if you have if you have 9 out of 10 charges already in the sword, you cannot absorb a fireball. You would need at least 3 to absorb a fireball cast at 3rd level. The shard regains all charges each time the moon changes. And the moon changes when you roll for a new Eldritch Moon, like I was talking about before. So when an Eldritch Moon occurs, you roll for that, and then the moon changes. I think since it says moon changes, I think that would also trigger when the Eldritch Moon stops. So when you have just a regular moon, when it goes from Eldritch Moon to regular moon, that also counts as changing, I think, and therefore it would regain all of its charges. In the untransformed state, you have no way to spend the charges. You can only absorb charges. All right, so transformed. To transform the blade, you must take a bonus action while under direct moonlight. On a hit, it deals an extra 2d12. Sorry. The transformation lasts for 1 minute or until you end it early as a bonus action. While the blade is transformed, the extra radiant damage it deals on a hit increases from 1d6 to 2d6. Now it has the full damage bonus of a vicious weapon, and you can expend the charges stored within the shard. When the shard loses all charges, the transformation ends. All right. Each time you make an attack in the transform state, you can expend charges to create special effects. Revealing Glow. As part of making an attack, you can spend 1 charge to empower the blade. On a hit, it deals an extra 1d12 radiant damage, and until the start of your next turn, the target sheds dim light in a 10-foot radius. While affected by the light, the target can't have the invisible condition, and attack rolls against it have advantage. So it says as part of making an attack, but it doesn't say when you hit, okay? So the way this would work is if you make any attack, whether it's the attack action or any form of attack, you can expend that 1 charge before the attack roll is made, and then you empower this, and it lasts until the start of your next turn. So for a whole round, for 1 charge, you have this enhanced state, which adds an additional 1d12 radiant damage, which would be, so now it's dealing 2d6 radiant damage plus 1d12 radiant damage. And if you hit them, they now are under the effect of basically fairy fire, and it's everyone you hit. So if you're like a fighter with like 4 attacks, and there's 4 enemies, you might want to just spread those attacks out and just hit every single one of them. It doesn't say, okay, and until the start of your next turn. It sheds dim light while affected by the light. Okay, so this fairy fire thing is only going to last until the start of your next turn. So I don't know, you'll have to pick and choose if it makes sense for you to be spreading this out or focus fire. Usually you want to focus fire, but if you have a bunch of other attackers in the party, giving everyone advantage and they don't have advantage from other sources that they can trigger themselves, then it might be more beneficial for you to spread your attacks out just to give everybody advantage against all the targets. Although even so, it's still better for the whole party to focus fire on one target to take it out in a round rather than all of them spreading their attacks out. So most of the time, I'm going to say you probably want to use this on a single target, and even if you could use the fairy fire on multiple targets, you're going to want to keep hitting that same target until it's dead. Transient Moonlight. As part of making an attack, you can expend 2 charges to release a wave of moonlight where the blade slashes, creating a 5-foot wide, 60-foot long line of moonlight originating from you. Each creature in the area must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw, taking 2d12 radiant damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. And it doesn't say... Yeah, it doesn't say that there's any reason you can't do both of these. So if you wanted to expend 3 charges, you could do both Revealing Glow and Transient Moonlight on the first attack of your attack. And note that this Transient Moonlight does not replace the attack. You still make the attack. This is just an additional effect that occurs simultaneously with that attack, which is why it's only 2d12, right? Because if this was 2d12 and replaced and was like you're in a magic action for 2d12 damage, that would be terrible. But no, you still make your attack, do all the damage as per normal, and then this effect occurs on top of that with every creature, including the one that you potentially, like, you don't have to point this in the direction that you made the attack. You could point this in to the west, while your creature you're attacking is to north. There's nothing indicating. There's nothing indicating that it has to be in the same line of direction as the target you're attacking. So you could do that, although you might want to. Most of the time, I would say you probably still want to use it on the line that includes the target you're attacking, just so you can add the 2d12 damage to them. Okay. So this is pretty interesting, cool little AoE effect. And then Lunar Explosion instead of making an attack. So this one does replace the attack. You can expend 3 charges to raise the blade upward and release a burst of moonlight energy. Each creature in a 30-foot emanation originating from you must make a dexterity saving throw. So this has friendly fire. On a failed save, a target takes 3d12 radiant damage and has the prone condition. This one is dexterity, not constitution. So your barbarian buddies and rogue buddies in the party are going to have a better time of that. If a creature falls prone within 5 feet of you, you can immediately take a reaction to make a melee weapon attack against them with the shard. On a successful save, a target takes half as much damage only. So this does replace an attack, but if you do knock something adjacent to you down, then you get your reaction to attack them. And if you don't have another way to weaponize your reaction, this basically gives you the attack back that you just expended to do this. And note that prone is one of those things that knocks creatures out of the air. And this is a 30-foot emanation. So if there's a creature 30 feet up from you, you could use this and knock them out of the air with it. And just make sure before you use it, move to a space that's adjacent to where they would be if they fall, so that you can use this. They fall 30 feet, take 3d6 bludgeoning damage from falling. on top of the 3d12 radiant damage from this, and then you reaction attack them because they are now prone within 5 feet of you. Pretty nice. And then this only replaced one attack. This isn't a magic action, so you still take the rest of your attacks and just wail on that thing that is now prone next to you. So yeah, I'd say this is pretty good for an artifact. I mean, it's going to be an A for an artifact, okay? It's not better than other artifacts, but or the other A-rated artifacts, but there's a lot of artifacts out there that are just not very good. And one of the things I appreciate about it is that it's not like super complex nor overly wordy. Yeah, it is longer than the other features here, but when I see artifacts, most of the time they are multiple pages. This is not. They have highly complex stuff and random features, and I think that that's unnecessary for artifacts. Like, yeah, I get the random features aspect just so that the player who played one campaign and saw that artifact can't just go into another campaign and say, oh, well, I know exactly what that artifact does. There's some randomness. They're going to be different from from campaign to campaign. I don't know. I think artifacts are just like are often made overly complex, overly wordy, which just makes it hard to like use and absorb and wrap your head around for everybody, DMs and players included. So I appreciate that this one is fairly straightforward, right? It's just a weapon. You can hit things with it. Yes, it's sentient. It's not going to like try to take you over. There's no big deal there. And in each of the forms, it's got a couple of different, special features it can do. Well, in untransformed, it has exactly one feature, which is just absorption. And then in the transform state, it has 3 extra things it can do that all expend charges. Pretty straightforward and easy to use. So yeah, this is going to be an A-ranked artifact. A-ranked is an artifact weapon for tanks, frontliners, and skirmishers because it is a melee weapon. But the transform state has, I'm going to give it a C for blaster effects. And that's relative to artifacts, right? If you wanted an A-rated artifact blaster, it would need to do more damage. But this is A as a weapon and also a blaster effect. So, and also a C for control, B for support. That's, essentially the fairy fire effect for your allies. B for scouting, C for self buff, and an A for survival. Yeah, because you have advantage on those wisdom saving throws, which is pretty good. It's just not against madness, which is kind of a big deal here in the Steinhardt's Eldritch Guide to the Eldritch Hunt, where madness is kind of a big deal. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I hope it helped. And we're already over an hour, so I'm going to wrap this one up quickly. Check the video description. If you don't have enough D&D in your life, there's a link to join my community. It's a community of people who just love D&D. And if you love D&D, you're probably a good fit. There's no paywall. You're welcome to join. There's also a link to the Google Drive that has all of this rating information in it, in all of these different sources. So if you want to look at that, you're welcome to look at that. It is also publicly available. No paywall to access that. There's also a link to Caius's monster data and a link to my DSR rules. Again, all of those publicly accessible, no paywalls. And I appreciate Caius for being willing to put all that together and then sharing it with everyone. And these are all great. These are all community resources meant to help people lower that barrier to entry for everyone to start enjoying D&D and or just get into playing D&D faster so you can have fun with it, which is the point of D&D. There is a link to join my Patreon if you're interested and you want to support in that way. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That is not the only way to support. And if it doesn't make sense for you, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. You can support by watching the videos, right? That helps. If you just like and subscribe and comment, that's also really helpful. Thank you so much. But I am very, very grateful to my Patreon supporters. So thank you all to all of those people. And finally, D&D is a game. So the only point of it is to have fun with your friends. So please remember to be cool when you play D&D, okay? All right. Catch you next time.